All right, jury trials. This is something we don't have in Eastern Europe. We have judges. And for the first time, you get one judge. You make an appeal, you get 3. You make another appeal, you get 5. And I think like eventually you can get to 9 to the Supreme Court. And so we don't have a jury. Now, the interesting part is that there's nothing wrong with a system that has judges. What is wrong is with a system that has a jury, and then all of a sudden doesn't want to have a jury. Because then the question is like, well, hold on a little bit, why not? What's going on there? And this is an example of the government creating a problem so that people beg the government to fix the problem. First of all, they're saying, oh, well, the courts are swamped. Like, there's so much crime in Britain. There's so much crime. And there's, like, victims of rapé, victim of the snuggle cuddle, of the taharush, and they're not getting justice. Isn't that horrible, citizen? Isn't it horrible? Like, don't you want us to help the victim? So, in other words, maximum emotionally charge the public. This is the biggest tactic used in the Anglosphere. Frame the problem with maximum level of hysteria so that anyone that disagrees with you is almost there holding the hand of the rapist, being in cahoots. Because the only medicine is a strong, powerful government. Now, there's also the financial aspect, which, in my opinion, should never be missing from any conversation ever. Especially not in Britain. Because they're having Eastern European problems and it requires Eastern European dialogue and solutions. And so, if you look at the money, you will notice that for the last decade or so, the courts have been underfunded. Whether it's prosecutors, legal aid, judges, buildings, the backlog is not a natural disaster. It is simply manufactured by the politicians. They didn't want to invest money into the courts. And so now, instead of fixing the problem, they're like, well, let's just change the system to adapt to the current situation. Because, well, it turns out jury happens to be expensive, right? And so you also look at the current situation. Why are there so many crimes all of a sudden? Well, because Britain has decided to police the cyberspace. And they are arresting more people for thought crimes than Russia is arresting them. Like, I don't know about the CCP. Maybe they're fudgeting the numbers, but if the numbers that the CCP is posting up about how many people get arrested for shit they post on the internet, it's also lower than Britain. And so, like, if Britain wants to become a totalitarian hellhole and basically police what people use on a keyboard, then yeah, sure, the number of cases is going to go up. And the problem is that a lot of jury, a lot of the common folk are going to say, hold on a little bit, like, this is ridiculous. You're arresting a person over a fidget spinner. You're arresting a person over rap limerick. You're arresting a person over this and that. And so, the jury can do the worst thing that the government doesn't want to see, which is acquit people, right? And so, like, if the government is the managerial class, like they are your mommy, daddy, your parents that get to decide when you are and aren't allowed on the internet, the one thing they hate the most is unpredictable juries. So, as we mentioned, juries being expensive, slow, unreliable from a managerial perspective, they acquit too much, especially in certain category of crime like hate speech. While in other politically sensitive types of crime, such as fraud and financial crime, they acquit too little. And that's a disaster. Like, imagine if it's the son of a politician. Imagine if it's the son of a mayor. Imagine if it's the nephew of someone important and they're being convicted for fraud and the jury finds the person guilty. I mean, that's horrible, right? So the decision to remove juries from fraud trials is really telling. And I think overall the main problem is that the elite in the United Kingdom distrust the public. The British political elites have quietly lost faith in the popular judgment. They vote incorrectly. They go with Brexit, they go with populism, they go with social fragmentation, radicalized perception of juries, all make them nervous about letting random civilians decide cases. Imagine, maybe they can acquit Nigel Farage one day, or decide to acquit Tommy Robinson. Or, heaven forbid, like the British public decides that hate speech and safetyism should go to the toilet, and so they start jury nullifying a lot of cases. And so, in my opinion, as an Eastern European, when institutions become too expensive or unpredictable, you don't reform it, you just castrate it. And the backlogs created by political neglect become justification for extending the executive control. The efficiency rhetoric is just used to restructure power downward, not to restore the capacity. And so, since I'm reading the French Revolution right now, I can tell you that usually, historically, what happens when something like this passes is that immediately you're going to see a rise in convictions, especially when it comes to hate speech and these crimes that are less than 3 years, while at the same time, the people that the government does protect, so the nepotism, the people that grift alongside the government, those people are going to be found innocent. I expect like the stats will probably come up in 5 years or so, and people are going to see that what I'm saying is accurate. But especially the fact that they're talking about rape and rape victims and stuff like that, that should now raise alarms. Like every single Anglospheric person should become immediately suspicious when the rhetoric becomes hyper-emotional, when there leaves absolutely no room for debate, for negotiation, for finding a middle ground. And it's basically like, look at this calamity that's happening. It's the worst evil, isn't it? We need to fix it, and our solution is the common sense one and the only solution. So notice how like there's no debate in society about this. Like even if we are to assume, okay, well, there's a huge backlog of crimes and there are now victims that are pulling away from the judicial system because they can't get any representation. And so the conversation should be like, what do we do about it? And there should be like at least 4 or 5 different options, like people trying to say, well, okay, like maybe some of the crimes aren't really that much of a danger to society as we believed. Can we not remove them? Or maybe they could have different things. But no, like it's always the government has decided without even having a national debate or anything like that. This is what the government is going to do. You're either with this or you're with the rapists. And if you try to make a petition, if you try to have your voice heard, they're going to turn that into toilet paper. And so I really like the picture that the BBC, that barely British corporation, has chose for this article thumbnail, which is an elite that's almost about to burst in laughter. Because obviously this is what's happening, right? Like notice how the BBC is not remotely skeptical about any of this. The Guardian doesn't have any sort of skepticism. These publications are almost like they're the PR spokespersons for the government. Like they're just informing the public, look, this is what's going to happen. This is how you need to think. If you think any differently, then you may be a problem and you're siding with the bad people. All in all, you know, it's definitely true that people who are concerned about this, they have a reason to be concerned, because I see you on Twitter, it's like, oh, well, hold on a little bit. Like, other countries don't use juries. Like, why do we need to use a jury? And the reason is like, look, if you have a tradition of not using a jury, that's fine. But when something worked for decades or hundreds of years and all of a sudden someone wants to change it, you gotta wonder why. And when the rhetoric is dialed to 11, you gotta stop a little bit and wonder, you know, are politicians really this hysterical and this emotional, or do they have something to hide? And so I would do the same. Like if in Romania they would actually decide to add jury trials. Like I would be like, oh, hold on a little bit. Like what's going on here? Why are we adding jury trials, right? Like it's suspicious. Why? Well, for a while, we didn't use them. Now we do. What's happening? What's changed? Right? And this is the correct mentality that I think British people need to have. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.